2020 is upon us. Back to the time of whatever happened in the 20s. I should have looked that up to make that joke, but I didn't. So, as you can probably assume, that means that we're in a new decade, which is impressive. So, what happened in this past decade? I'm gonna try and figure out what my favorite game of this decade was. Not necessarily the best per se, because, you know, it's personal opinion. But I'm just gonna, you know, look through what I thought about these games. So, come with me. And we'll work it out, kind of together. But mostly this is gonna be a one-sided conversation. I think it's mostly going to be me talking, and probably you going, ah. So, we'll find out. Oh, I really need to sneeze. That would not be good. Firstly, what happened? What do I do with my hands? Firstly, what happened in the early 2010s? It's kind of hard to remember for me, so I'm going to have a little bit of a reflection on the decade, year by year, mostly. So, well, 2010 had Red Dead Redemption and Heavy Rain. I enjoyed both those quite a bit. I kind of get why someone might not like Heavy Rain. That game is a little bit robotic in script and in gameplay, but I like noir in general, so it's pretty fun for me. Mass Effect 2 also came out, but for me that was the first sign of BioWare's diminishing returns. Too many cuts and alterations to the core mechanics, and too much, reuse, copy and paste character models, and a story that to me was it just seemed like it was written by a 15-year-old that had just watched some conspiracy action movies and just shoved in a bunch of stuff. So, not my favorite, which is a shame, because I think Mass Effect 1 was, a good game. – 2011. Whew, yeah. So famously, 2011 had Skyrim. It came out 11/11. It was just mental. There was adverts for it everywhere. Yeah, people that don't even care in the slightest about games were talking about Skyrim because the adverts were so strong. And also, I feel like this was around about the same time that Game of Thrones was starting, so people were getting into like swords and sandals, not swords and sandals because it's not really deserty, but swords and helmets, let's put it that way. People were getting into helmets, and Skyrim had that really impressive one with the horns like that. Skyward Sword as well. Skyrim, Skyward Sword. Yeah, they both came out around about the same time, and they both arrived at my university house on the same day, and it was interesting to load up Skyrim and play it alongside Dan of Gaming Under the Influence, Danny boy. We both played it at the same time. He was playing on his Xbox in the living room, I was next door in my bedroom, and every now and then we sort of ran between just going like, what are you doing? I'm doing this. Run back and sit down and play it a little bit more, and then just shout through the wall like, I just shot a guy with a bow. So yeah, that was the community that I had there was greater than the game. The game was pretty good though. But Skyward Sword also came out, and I didn't get into that very far before my Wii was stolen in university. So, don't let strangers into your house. Actually, I never beat Skyrim either, because it was a little bit easy for me to become disillusioned with, you know, the way that the story and mechanics were written. Just not impressive. But overshadowing that entirely, Dark Souls came out. Cue Dark Souls noise. Kindle that flame. So that came out, and Dan and I played that to utter death. He'd gotten the art book edition, and we looked through the art, and it just looked amazing. And he started up the game, and just everything about it was gorgeous. And we struggled through the tutorial together, although we kept on going like, this game has no tutorial. It does. But yeah, we finally made it through that bit, and then we made it to the Firelink Shrine, and it was just gorgeous to see the new world like ahead of us. And Dan proceeded himself out of the game by attacking the crestfallen knight, who would just obliterate him every time that he awoke at the fire next to it. So that was lovely. That was classic Dark Souls. I also spent a lot of time playing LA Noire.
LAPD, could you stand clear of the body, please?
I know the game wasn't perfect for a couple of reasons, mostly due to Phelps's unpredictable mood swings and you know, the limited realms of gameplay. Like, you couldn't bring out your gun any old time, and you know, I kind of liked the boundaries to some extent. And just generally, I like noir. I can't really avoid that, but I thought it was pretty darn good. I was told by my friends that I look like Phelps. Generic white guy. So yeah. I seem, in my script here on my TV, which is below the camera, ooh, I seem to have skipped 2012. Yeah, well, I skipped 2012, so I'm going to assume that there was nothing too impressive that year for me personally. But 2013 had The Last of Us. Hoo boy! Oh, I need to replay that game. I need to replay that. I think I've actually got it on my PS4, and I've just not touched it because time. I just don't have any time. But boy, oh boy, that game had a great balance of agonizing story and sturdy gameplay. I think for me, the only real downside was that the clickers were a little bit OP. And I remember getting kind of frustrated with one section where I just kept on getting gnawed on the throat, so. But yeah, my opinion. 2014 brought Dark Souls 2. Oh god, I love that game, and I also hate that game. I played through the game with my uni course mates through the improved functions of the online that they had. So I remember we all got it on launch day, and I played through with Dan and James, who is on Twitch. James is on Twitch under the name of Jammeus. Shoom. So check him out. Yeah, and we played through together. Boss by boss, we would go into each other's worlds and sort each other out. So that was good fun. And the colour palette of that game was incredibly more dreamlike, but sadly, here's the thing that I hate about it. It just felt too much like a video game, which is crazy to say, right? Because it is a video game. But it just felt like, oh, now I'm going to the lava world. Which was a bit of a shame. I think that's most people's complaint with the game, is the, lack of interconnectivity. But, tis what it is. The game did have a lot of improvements though, like dual wielding. Come on. Yeah. I do generally agree with Bomber Guy on that it was kind of an overlooked gem. I went back and played through it entirely recently. I was going to make a video on it, and I had, however many hours of footage, and I had written a massive script, and I came to the conclusion that pretty much everything I had to say aligned more or less perfectly with Bomber Guy. So I deleted everything. I deleted footage in my script because it's already been said. Typed in the number 9 there. Yeah, okay, well, the 2014 also had The Evil Within, which I wouldn't play for a couple of years, maybe 1 year, 1 or 2 years. I wouldn't play it, but my older brother got it for Christmas the year that it came out, and I remember him being a little bit too scared to play it, which is funny, but I remember he played through it quite cautiously, and the beginning of that game is just phenomenal. Absolute, perfection, to be honest. The game didn't quite ditch the action tropes Resident Evil had picked up. It did maintain a sense of a continuous waking nightmare, and I love that. That was brilliant. So, yeah, get more of that, please. "2015, what an explosive year." I mean, I had moved to Japan, and by the end of the year I'd bought myself a PS4, and with it I bought Dragon Age, Inquisition, and Until Dawn. Inquisition was the biggest disappointment of the decade. I'm gonna say it right now. I'm gonna put that as my least favourite game that I played this year. It's not my least favourite game of the decade, actually. There is one other one, but biggest disappointment was this game. I played the first game, Dragon Age Origins, yeah. I played Dragon Age Origins, and I loved that. That story was so involving, and by the end I fought a massive dragon and found a way to save as many people as possible. I had grown into that world, just delved into it and felt really comfortable with what I was doing and who everyone was, where everything was. And the second game, which I bought just because I was sort of hyping up for Inquisition, the second game was abysmal, just a lazy copy and paste affair. Everything was copy and pasted. The character models looked just unfinished. It looked really unfinished to have these models. Oh my god, everything just looked so ununique, and just one character model was made for an enemy, and that was just copy and pasted and dragged around. And then every single time that you went into a dungeon, it was just a copy and paste of the dungeon, and then sometimes a different area would be opened up and you'd go back, and it was just, oh god, not good. But it was such a wasted concept, because the idea of being trapped in more or less in a city and going around mostly that city and solving problems within like a confined space, that's a brilliant idea. That's a great idea, but it just didn't make it. It didn't get there for me. Oh, so yeah, to actually get back to Dragon Age Inquisition, yeah, I found it to be just a detached, bloated game, like a massive world with just different checklists just to check off, and just, oh god, it was like an MMO but without any strengths. You know, and I had such a cliched story, like you were the chosen one with powers of far greater than your peers. But yeah, basically the plot just felt like Oblivion, which is a shame because Oblivion's plot is pretty lame as well, to be honest. But I played it for about 10 hours and then I got bored, which is such a shame because when I bought my PS4, I'd sort of promised myself that every game that I buy, I would play like cover to cover and just really delve in deep and, you know, learn that game and live in that game like you did when you were a kid, when you couldn't buy your own games. But I had to give up on that game, and then it was just already just a slope into never beating any games, just giving up on all of them pretty much. But yeah, it is the biggest disappointment of the decade in my opinion, especially because, you know, BioWare, come on, look at where they are now. Don't even want to think about it. Nothing that they've done since Age Origins has been interesting. Like, it's all just been a mess in my opinion since Dragon Age Origins, which is a shame. I was never interested in Anthem. That always looked like a pile of wee-wee to me. I don't know how people got interested in that. Anyway, back to this year. Where were we? 2015, Bloodborne. Whoo-wee! Wow. That was, you know, whew. Dark Souls, Lovecraft. It's pretty good, you know. Another case of continuous waking nightmare and wonderful color palette. Another game that I feel the urge to go back and play right now, just by mentioning the name. And this year, 2015, still talking about 2015, also saw the release of Phantom Pain, a very strange, long, agonizing goodbye to Metal Gear Solid. Poetically, the game is unfinished but beautiful. I mean, it could be seen that that's not an intention, but if you read it as an intention, then it just feels like a nice poetic bow to the whole thing. All the mechanics in that game are perfectly crafted, and the story was not sadly. I think this is the point, well, Kojima was way beyond this point, but just very much of going, you want crazy madcap stories that don't make any sense? I'll give you stories that don't make any sense, and then just going ba-dum, 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 throat leeches, the Volgan's alive, but he's continuously on fire, Moby Dick, just blah, blah, blah. You know, which is kind of a shame, but also, hey, enjoy it. But yeah, it was really hard for me to comprehend. Maybe mostly because I played it in Japanese. The Japanese copy only has English text and no voice. It was all Japanese voicing, which meant that to sit through the audio logs, I had to sit and read it. I couldn't just put on the audio logs and go and do the dishes. Why did I? It's because I teach kids. You have to gesture for everything that you... But yeah, the open world design there, I'm pretty sure must have been a big influence on Breath of the Wild and general future open world things. So I hope that game designers have learned a lot from that one, because That was a good open world. Fallout 4 also came out that year, which was probably my second biggest disappointment. I wanted Fallout to be voiced for such a long time, and I was really looking forward to it. Just let that moped go past. But I didn't realise that the cost would be, you know, decent narrative and character building. It was all just swept away. It took a while for people to notice, but they did notice. And also, Jesus Christ, the story was just Numbers 3's story, but in reverse. Oh my god, I looked it up. It's the same bloody writer. I can't believe he got paid for 2 jobs just by doing 1 job and then just turning the paper around that he worked on and handing that in. Oh my god. Oh my, I could sneeze out a better job. Even like this, even stammering over myself, I could sneeze out a better story than that guy has written and been paid for. It's, oh my, I can't think about Bethesda. I can't think about their writers. It's just, oh god. Whew, my word. No. But yeah, all nuance from the better games was just lost, and you know, at the end of the game you use a flipping nuke. Oh my god! Oh my god! I so wish that Fallout 2, and in fact Fallout 1 and 2, should come bundled on the Switch, just this together. Oh, that would be so good, and then we could all forget about this rubbish that Bethesda's doing. Anyway, I'm not going to read through my script that I wrote for Fallout 4 because I really just can't talk about it right now. It's just stressful. Okay, so 2016 had The Last Guardian. A game I'd wanted for ages and ages and ages. Shadow of the Colossus is probably my favourite game, so, you know, this was brilliant for me. While the experience of The Last Guardian was emotional and enjoyable, it wasn't quite the same as Shadow of the Colossus. That, you know, never was going to be. But having the biggest pet to look after and go on a journey with was just, you know, nice. It was like going on a play adventure in your head with your favourite pet, which I'm going to assume is a big dog, a big bird, cat, dog, mouse thing. But yeah, the game has a sense of wonder to it, and it's, you know, the sense to it is almost Christmas-like, the feeling of waking up and excitedly rushing to see what's going to happen. Uncharted 4 also made, you know, big waves. Uncharted 4, also pretty much the epitome of its series, you know, cinematic characters, witty experiences. Uncharted 4 was probably the epitome of its series, you know, witty characters, cinematic experiences, and a wonderful landscape. You know, it's just, Uncharted 4 is the perfect Spielbergian video game. I feel like they achieved everything that they wanted to achieve in that game. And Dark Souls 3, I've mentioned all of the Soulses. Dark Souls 3, you know, for me, maybe the best Dark Souls game, maybe. In fact, all of the best aspects of all of the game series were found in the DLC for Dark Souls 3, which is definitely my favourite game of the series. Just the DLC, like if you take that slice of the 2 DLCs, that is just a perfect Shump, like slice there. That's the cake of the DLC, and take a bite. Go on, it's good. You know, the final boss of the final DLC, I feel, is a representation of what the Dark Souls community and fan base has become. You know, hungry for more no matter what cost, and you just fight it, and it's frantic. It's fantastic. That's another thing that I could probably talk about another time. But the imagery in that game, and especially through the DLC, is just gorgeous throughout. In fact, again, the DLC unmistakably perfect. Here we are, 2017. That was definitely Nintendo's year, with the Switch, Breath of the Wild, Mario Odyssey. You know, wow. I do plan to talk about Breath of the Wild in detail another time, because my opinion on it is complex and a little confusing. But I do intend to come back to Breath of the Wild another time, because I've got something to say about it. But for now, let's just agree that the general mechanics and colour palette in that are just top-notch, like, you know, gorgeous. Odyssey, Mario Odyssey, is probably the first Mario game that I've played since playing it on the Game Boy, and I was not let down. It was everything I could want from a platformer, and I only beat the story. I'm yet to go on to the end game content, which I have been told is the real game. So I've sort of saved that away for if I get the urge for a platformer again and just want like a real decent one. But yeah, Odyssey, beautiful graphics, beautiful interpretation of the classic formula, just, you know, through and through a wonderful experience. And I never really thought that I'd be so enthusiastic about a Mario game, because I don't know, like I said, the last time that I played one was on the Game Boy, and yeah, it was just warming and comfortable. Yeah, and then there was Nier Automata, or Automata, don't know how to pronounce that, which was just an absolute joy. Like the fighting, the music, just the story, the design, the character design especially, and just the fact that it was the outcome of one of many endings of a previous game, which in itself was one of many endings of a previous game. Like, what a beautiful journey just to get to the game itself. Like, I think that's gorgeous. I've written about how that sort of is a reflection of how life just sort of goes. Like, that's, you know, that's the bizarre journey that we all go on. Like, you expect to be doing one thing, and then as like an outcome of another, you end up doing another thing, and it just leads you down like this very specific path. 2018, Monster Hunter World. Oof. That's another beautiful experience. Just the whole world was gorgeous, and it changed my opinion on the franchise. My previous encounter was with Monster Hunter Tri, and I hadn't really ever played any other game, but this was just, you know, this massive, breathtaking ecosystem, which was just fantastic. You know, it has a lot of the typical Japanese RPG, busy work, you know, and food, but just, you know, it's got this sense of like, you've got to prepare and research and just craft things. It's very much just like this really good cycle of things, and just is fun, which is weird. I don't actually really like crafting all that much, and this game is pretty much just crafting, and it's good. So it's a bit bizarre, but you know, yeah. Maybe that's why I don't like crafting, is because games like this have already done it so well, and like it's got its own like bubble for the thing. So it's very in there, you know. Plus the game is, other than that, essentially just continuous boss battles, which is, you know, great. I love boss battles. I know that they're not for everyone, but for me, I like to have like a challenge to see if I can, you know, use my learned skills against a decent opponent, and that's a boss battle to me. And Monster Hunter World is it's that. It's just boss battles. It's nice. Yeah, and it's amazing to see like how much the game can change depending on what you're fighting and what you're fighting it with. Your weapon choice makes a huge difference in that game. It's unbelievable. Also, just it looks gorgeous. I think I've already said that, but just it's a gorgeous game. Well, the year came to a close with Red Dead Redemption 2. My oh my. That game was a journey of human relationships, and just not only interhuman, but like humans and nature, humans and the earth, humans and money, humans and culture, like shoosh, you know? Yeah. Just the entire game was a massive metaphor for changing times, man versus the outdoors, how we forced the world to change for us, how America forced the natives to change and die off, and also how the era of cowboys was forced to die off. Dutch embodies the American dream, and also that trying to force yourself to the top doesn't always get you there. Arthur is the flip side of the American dream there, you know, doing good for others and living off the land. The game is kind of like a big collection of Jack London stories, or perhaps other cowboy stories. You could argue that you might have a very similar experience just by sitting down and reading Jack London, but you know, how many people are picking up copies of Jack London these days? By the way, if you're into Red Dead Redemption, Jack London's pretty much entire anthology is available pretty much free. I have it with the majority of his works on my Kindle, which is in the public domain, so I can't stress enough that if you like Red Dead Redemption, then Jack London is for you, and there's going to be a way for you to read his work, and you should, because he was also an inspiration for the Ballad of Buster Scruggs. Not necessarily that section, because that section of the movie is just based on spaghetti westerns, but the prospector in the movie The Ballad of Buster Scruggs is based on a Jack London story, and it is phenomenal. Oh, Spider-Man. Almost got out of 2018 without talking about Spider-Man. Whew. Yeah, Spider-Man. Marvel's Spider-Man. Don't know how many times I can say Spider-Man, but I'm gonna try. One more time. Spider-Man was just fantastic. It nailed all of the Spider-Man mechanics, you know, swinging and webs and smarm. He did a very good job. The voice actor did a brilliant job of bringing in the smarm. But I was just blown away noticing that he had recorded all of his voice lines twice, like one for stationary and one for moving. The game, however, was held back by a couple of video game tropes that haven't aged so well. The two biggest things that I can think of are awkward stealth sections. I really wish that I recorded it, because for all of the stealth, I basically broke script and just powered through almost in a direct line. I could tell that it wasn't where the game wanted me to be going, and I just sort of slipped between items, so the game was a little bit broken there. And also just the reason why I did that and didn't do it the way that the developers wanted me to is because that kind of stealth section is boring. I love stealth games so much, but no thank you. No, thank you. Oh, and the other thing, the boss battles, sometimes that one in particular that I can think of wasn't really a test of what you'd learned, but rather was just press a button now, and that was a shame. Hitman 2. I'm doing the Spider-Man thing again, where I'm just going to say it a lot because flippin' heck, it is a great game. So Hitman 2 came out and it improved on all of the mechanics of its predecessor, which in itself is an underrated gem. I think those two games have the best gameplay loop in recent memory. They're just the planning, failing, letting things get out of hand and just boom. I know that some people don't like that for some reason, but that's one aspect of the game. Like, you play it once and everything snowballs into disaster, and then you play it again, a little bit more learned from the experience, and you go in a bit more prepared and then do things more stealthily, and then you realize that there are a million ways to do it, and the game shows you some of them. Sure, you get like good job for doing some of them, and it can guide you through, but I think that's nice because sometimes you just want to see the interesting ways that have been implemented. If you're really like hardcore about it, just ignore it. You can swish it off. Bada bing, bada boom. So I really think that it's a shame that those games, I might as well just say Hitman 2, because you're able to sort of use it as an expansion onto Hitman 1, Season 1, to expand the experience, because it's an expansion. But yeah, just they're so underrated. But yeah, the puzzles, because they are puzzles, the missions are essentially just big elaborate puzzles, are just wonderfully crafted, and just there's a certain aspect of just perfectionism to that, and go buy a copy if you haven't already got it, because Hitman 2, I'm going to come out and say it right now, it's not my game of the decade, but it is, I think, third place. Hitman 2, third, joint second, I think. Joint second. I'm going to say it right now. It's not the top for me, but I think it is joint second. Just, you'll see why later. You'll see why. You see why. Okay, so finally, 2019. Blimey! I think I only missed out 1 year during this reel, which is impressive. So, 2019, this year brought a whole mind explosion worth of games. Let's see, we have Sekiro, we have Control, and we have Death Stranding. I think those are the 3 to talk about, mostly. There's tons of indie stuff that I'm going to have to glaze over. It's really annoying. Maybe I should have just made a separate video for indie games as well. I'm not going to. This is already taking a lot of writing and a lot of work. I am sorry. Control. It's very ambitious, picking up on tones of X-Files and Twin Peaks. Mostly X-Files, I think you would agree, and some internet thing that I've been told about several times, and I forgot the name of it, I'm sorry. I think for me it falls a little short of being a, you know, like air quotes Twin Peaks game, if only because the only way that you can interact with things is in a violent manner. And you are not exploring a network of people, but rather a network of documents, which is not very Twin Peaksy. I think people would agree. So yeah, that's why it's more X-Files strong and a little bit superhero-y. Oh, and the game misses being in my top 3. Because of the weapon mod system was just pointless. And some of the combat situations were just entirely unfair. Like, you would be blindsided. I mentioned it in a video like 20 minutes after I started playing the game. You just get blindsided and you just blow up and die, and there's ways around that. But Control, brilliant visuals, brilliant music, brilliant story as well. Actually, I kind of glazed over that a little bit. The story is fantastic, and it's good that games are doing things like that. Yeah, that's why I think maybe it's number 5 in my games of the decade. Bear in mind, not just 2019. 2019, it's up there. But yeah, I think it's number 5 of the decade. No, it's not. It's not number 5. Sorry, that would probably be something else that I'm not going to say, because you might expect that to be number 1, but it's not. Sekiro is also close to being perfect, but I think maybe this comes down to me. I'm not good at the game. I don't have the patience. I don't have the hand-eye coordination to play it. Basically, I'm just not good enough at the game. I'm willing to admit that. I'm not necessarily good at games. I just like to play them. I can play Dark Souls. I can play Bloodborne. Sekiro, I can't do it. I just can't. And I got stuck about I guess about halfway through. And now I won't be able to go back to it because it's been so long and I'm so out of the loop, and it's a hard boss that I'm stuck on. But being that I live in Japan, I could easily walk around and see places that looked like they're from Sekiro, and my mind would just start to go like, how can I scale up this thing? Just shoot out my broken, horrible, mangled arm thingy and zip line up and climb over that temple, go through these mountains and fight centipede monsters. It was all just going through my head constantly, and yeah, it's a gorgeous game. I will one day hopefully go back and try to get past the bit that I'm stuck on, but it's going to take a while. So maybe this is where I would this is like the real rare occasion where I would argue that maybe there should be an easy mode, just because I have not been able to get past this boss, and it's technically been months and months and months, but I don't feel encouraged to do so, and thus I'm not going to see the rest of the game, and it feels kind of sad to have such a massive cutoff. And here we get to Death Stranding. God, I have been waiting for this game since, I guess, whenever Metal Gear Solid 2 came out, and it was obvious that Kojima wanted to be done with the Metal Gear franchise. So I have been waiting probably as long as he has. It's definitely not nearly the same that he's wanted to work on different projects for this time, but yeah, as a fan, I've wanted to see what he's going to do, and it is here. I'm currently not very far through the game because I was studying the Japanese language proficiency test. Can't speak the English. That test was a couple days after the game came out, so... Wait. No, the test was like a month after the game came out. So I couldn't play it, I just had to study. So I'm getting on it. After this video, I'm going to go play it. But I think it's fair to say that Kojima has made another masterpiece. The thing that he does is he makes interactive metaphors. They are like interactive, cinematic, mind-blowing metaphors. Just the sole act of traversing the land, representing our struggles to get through our daily goals and our greatest ambitions, and the way that you need to carry certain things with you to get there, and the way that basically you work and you work and you work, and it's basically to make other people happy. And also, I mentioned before, but I feel like the act of Sam Porter Bridges carrying his mother on his back to go burn her was like this symbolic thing of Kojima going, that is Konami done with. I have thrown it into the fires. I've heard from someone else that Kojima's games are always very autobiographical, and I think that this is another key example. I could go into it for hours and hours and hours, but I think there's probably people that are going to do a better job than me. If I was in conversation with someone, I think it would come out quite well, but going into it essay form, one, I don't have the time to do it right now because I'm doing this thing, and two, I think someone could do a better video on it. So someone, why am I fingers crossed, someone please do that. But Death Stranding, wow, yeah, this is truly a landmark of video games and video game mechanics and development and progression. I think it will affect the way that people view video games, definitely with the amount of people that collaborated to be in the game and work on the game. It's a sign that games are a really strong medium now, just the way that people are working together on it. So yeah, oh my god, I would love to work with Kojima, but I'm going to pretend that the only reason why I'm not is because I live in Osaka and not in Tokyo. I'm going to pretend that if I lived in Tokyo, I would just be working with him. Definitely not because I don't have enough skill or talent. I could write. Just send me a line. Send me a line. Or an email. Or Telegram. Send me anything, Kojima. We'll talk. I can write really, really well. Yeah. So, I've already said what the biggest disappointment of the decade was. Dragon Age, Inquisition, and Fallout 4. Such a shame. Two studios that go way back, and I guess kind of the key people in it have moved around and they've been bought up by, you know, giants that aren't interested in narrative. They're interested in moolah. Moolah. I think that's the first time I've ever said moolah, especially genuinely. But what actually makes my #1 game? We are almost there. Before I do that though, I'm just gonna make one tiny subcategory for my favorite micro game. And by that, I mean my favorite way to waste away an hour or two, or sometimes 4. And that sort of title inherently goes to an indie title, I think. And it's going to Risk of Rain. Risk of Rain. I'm gonna, hopefully this blue screen will be working. And, oh, Risk of Rain. Yeah, boy. Oh my word, yeah, such a wonderful pixel art roguelike that gives you multiple ways to play with several unlockable characters and buffs and mods and boons and items and so much stuff. One of the best. I'm getting excited thinking about it. The core mechanic, I think, is that the game gets harder the longer that you play, but also the longer that you play, you accumulate more money from killing things that you can spend on upgrades. So you need to get like this balance of how long do I play to get the money versus how long do I play before it's unbeatable. I think it takes about 40 minutes for it to get to the hardest difficulty, after which point it is just a barrage of enemies, and oh my word, it is gorgeous. I'm looking into getting the sequel, Risk of Rain 2, but I need to move apartments soon, so money! But to be fair, Risk of Rain itself, the original one, it's the game that I go back to the most whenever I want to play a game. If I want to play a little game for a couple hours, even 30 minutes maybe, I will load up Risk of Rain and I will play it and I will have fun every single time. So again, another recommendation. If you've not played it, get it. It's a wonderful game. Another subcategory for special mention is going to Torment, Tides of Numenera. Now this game is kind of more like a tabletop RPG, and you are managing like your entire party and your main character, and the game itself is the dungeon master or the game master. Another way to look at it is that it is entirely literary. It's got a lot of reading. I'm going to put that up front. It's got a lot of reading. If you want to sit down and have like this in-depth look around a perfectly created world, Torment, Tides of Numenera, it's right there. I might make a dedicated video to Torment once I get my copy back off Dan, because it's just so layered and amazing, and it's something that I want to think about and play more. But yeah, it's the sort of game that you would play when you feel like being an armchair strategist, or if you want to get like into a decent book. It is Torment, Tides of Numenera. The only real setback is that it's got hefty loading times between screens. Otherwise it would be like this just a wonderful RPG. And again, I feel like it gets overshadowed by other RPGs, which there's been a bounty of recently, like the classic style. They don't necessarily have to be isometric, but the decent ones do tend to be isometric, like Shadowrun, Pillars of Eternity. Is that isometric? I've not played it yet. Going to. And Divinity. They're all fantastic, and Tides of Numenera seems to get a little bit overlooked, but bingo bango, it is, yeah, go play it. And one last special mention. I probably could just talk about games forever, but I gotta wrap this up. So one last special mention goes to Nier Automata, because I really wanted this to be my game of the decade. I wanted this to be my game of the decade because it was so affecting and just brilliant. I mean, the game has amazing combat. It's got beautiful nuances and probably the best video game music of the decade. Just at the very least, the way that it adapts between different sections and like just between sound aesthetics, it's just spectacular. It's just spectacular. To really appreciate the efforts to put in philosophy. Even if you consider the underlying questions of what does it mean to be human, or does any one person have a greater right than any other human, even if you consider those two questions to be sort of basic philosophy, I think it's good for games to start putting that in there. There's been tons of games that have philosophy in them and will make you think about it, but it's more of like a subconscious thing, whereas this game specifically talks about it up front, and it's entry level to getting you into thinking about these things more, which I think, considering that games have such a massive influence on the audience, do it games. More philosophy, please. Much. Likewise, I think that you know, like a lot of the main characters are named after philosophers, like Engels, Pascal, and Sartre. I don't know how to pronounce his name, but lots of the characters are named after these philosophers, and again, you might argue that it's not enough for them to just go like, here's the name of a philosopher. I think that's brilliant, because what do you do after that? You look up the philosopher, you see if you're interested in that school of thought, and then you start reading about it. So, you know, hopefully that will get people more into the realms of philosophy, which would be good going, I think. Yeah, talking about this game makes me want to go back to the start and just play it through entirely again, because I thought it was gorgeous. Dan thought that the world was underdeveloped and drab and disgusting. I think it was not those things. I think that the world design was a little bit clunky because it's not necessarily like a massive budget game, but I feel that going around and seeing like these horrible washed out buildings that you can't even enter is again another like little basic comment on human life and how we've built up all of these weird rules and regulations and buildings and just sort of completely destroyed the earth and made it into like this horrible place when it could be so beautiful. So it might just be me reading in a lot there though, which I'm not afraid to admit to. If that is the case, whatever, I'm reading that in. I still even think that just running around the desert and sliding around is it's good looking. I liked it. So this video has been going on and on and on and on and on and on. It's been a long one, and my voice is getting a little bit dry, so I'm gonna have a drink. But game of the year, not year, I need to stop thinking that. Game of the decade isn't going to Dark Souls. Emphasis on isn't going to Dark Souls. Not a special mention per se, but a commiserations to Dark Souls because of, you know, it's been so influential, not just on the game world, but on people's personal lives. It's just been like this great thing of, you know, working through the struggles that we have in life, facing unbeatable odds in dark and depressing worlds. What a gorgeous game. And also it changed my opinion on, you know, how a game works. I was very much into things being very streamlined, and then this made me realize that you don't need to have absolute shine and polish to a thing for it to be beautiful. Dark Souls is one of the most beautiful games ever, in spite of the fact that it's clunky and slow. I remember looking at the videos for Demon Souls and thinking, oh no, that looks too slow and too just unbearable to play. I'm not going to buy that. And then now I flippin' love it. So, you know, good going to From Software. Also, it completely changed that company around. They were just making mech games, mostly. And then Demon Souls and Dark Souls changed it into basically that, and they became like this, like, not globe-trotting, globally recognized thing of just, yeah, it's fantastic. Again, I feel that I can't really say anything about Dark Souls that hasn't already been said, but it has been there as a social pillar ever since it's been released. Been there pretty much since day one, because Dan got it delivered, I think pre-order. So, been there pretty much since day one with Dark Souls, and just loved it every single step of the way, so yeah.
Commiserations.
It didn't make my game of the decade, which I think is gonna have to be Red Dead Redemption 2. Yeah. It was tough to come to this conclusion, because my god, we have been blessed with games, but Red Dead Redemption 2, it is the top of this list. It's probably going to be the top of many lists, and that is for good reason. The game is an absolute epic, and I mean that in the traditional sense. It is an amazing narrative. Technically, the world that you go around isn't so big, but the story that you go through is massive. On a personal level, on a cultural level, it's fantastic. Like I said before, it's essentially a great American novel. In fact, I don't think I did say that, but it is essentially a great American novel. It's more than that. It's an anthology of great American novels, tiny short stories, and just all squeezed into this dense ball of pleasure. Oh my. Yeah. All of these stories wrapped into one downward spiral, brought on by greed and pride and the progression of life just pushing, marching on, and the way that America was made. Oh my word, it is... Again, I should make another dedicated video. Each character in the camp and each character that you, well, not each character that you meet, but a lot of the characters that you meet, I would say represent different aspects of the American dream and American life. Easy one to get into. Dutch, he's greed and pride. The churchman, forgot his name. It's been a year since I played it, because I'll come back to why in a second. But the churchman being like the crazed influence that that religion has on America. The chef being representative of the way that America treats its troops and soldiers, despite the fact that the country has been around for what, I think it was, I don't know how long America's been around, because I forgot. I don't care anymore. 200 years? And most of those years they've been in some kind of war, and America just treats their troops like rubbish. And Arthur is nature. Arthur is nature and honesty, and just the, you know, the honesty of the land. He represents the people of America, those willing to work hard and, you know, get the job done, help others, and do anything necessary to, you know, try to create a better world. Or, you know, he hints a lot that he's a bad guy. To just get the job done. People will do things anyway. So, yeah, he also represents the beautiful country that is used and abused by the greedy and prideful, such as Dutch, you know. This game enraptured me. I would wake up at 7:30 in the morning and just play straight through until 9 at night. And I can't really say that of many other games. Nothing is coming to mind. But a year ago, I was playing this game just day in, day out. More than my job, you know. It was like living inside a Jack London anthology. I've heard arguments that the storyline gameplay doesn't match the free roam gameplay. But I think that's kind of necessary for a couple reasons. One, it creates balance, and two, the game is narrative based and it needs to follow a script. Like, following a script is not a bad thing. I don't mind having a predetermined sequence, especially seeing as it breaks up the aspects of the free roam section and keeps the story on a steady pace, you know. I think it's good. In the game as well, I also love that certain processes take a while to do. I love that a lot of time is spent contemplative on your horse, which kind of just makes it a little bit more sad when the horse dies. Like, you're making a more realistic connection to the world because you're spending more time in the world and you are contemplating about what has just happened, what is going to happen. Oh my god, it's good. The game should be a benchmark for the future. I mentioned a little bit that I haven't really played the game for a year, and that's because I felt too emotionally attached to go back and play again. I think Dan said the same. I feel like most people feel the same, that story that you create and go through is your personal journey, and everything that happens is so just grounded and down to earth, and just such an emotional journey. It is like living through someone's autobiography, and then, you know, you can't really try to relive a life again. So that's why I've not gone back to play it so much, because the game was kind of just too well written. So I hope that devs learn from Red Redemption to, you know, from the good and from the bad. Ooh, oh my word. This video was incredibly hard to make, incredibly hard to write, to think about, to talk about. You know, mostly because we've been so blessed with video games this decade. I'm confident that the medium will only continue to improve and expand and just continue to open our hearts. And I know that sounds a little bit corny, but that's what games are doing now. They're making you feel things that you'd never feel before. Expect me to put up images from Dark Souls, from Death Stranding, and from Red Dead right here, because those games are some of the cornerstones of the progression of the medium, and it's been a pleasure to be able to say that I've played them. So this video is going to be coming out in 2020, because right now it is 22:36 and my camera's died. But as I was going to say, it was already almost the new year, so inherently the video would come out in the new year rather than beforehand.
So thanks for watching all of this. It's been a long journey, and thank you for any and all support that you've given me. Even by watching this has been a massive support. Please continue watching other videos, and I've got plenty of them now. I'm gonna have tons more, I'm sure of it. I'd be really interested to see what other people's thoughts of the decade was, so feel free to comment and let's talk about it down there. The channel is still really small, so I'd really appreciate any likes, subscribes, or sharing. In fact, maybe sharing is probably the best thing that you can do. So if you want to talk about this with friends, please feel free to share it. And visit me on Patreon if you can. That would be absolutely lovely. So have a good decade, everyone. Bye.